Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Shodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Shodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya Astar Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaura Premananda All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, Devahuti's Lamentation. Today we're going to start with text 14 and 15, which don't have a purport. So I'll read it myself. Then we'll chant together text 16, text 16, which does have a purport. And then I'll read myself text 17, which has a very small purport, and text 18 that has no purport. So text 14 and 15. Divyopakarano petam sarvakala sukhavaham patikabir vicharibir alankritam sragbir vichitra mayabir manju sinjat shadangribihi dukula Shauma Kaushayar Nanavastrayar Virajitam. Translation. The castle was fully equipped with all necessary paraphernalia, and it was pleasing in all seasons. It was decorated all around with flags, festoons, and artistic work of variegated colors. It was further embellished with wreaths of charming flowers that attracted sweetly humming bees, and with tapestries of linen, silk, and various other fabrics. So text 16, we'll chant together. Uparyupari Vinyasta Nilayeshu Pritak Shiptai Kashipubi Kantam Paryanka Vajjanasanai Uparyupari Vinyasta Nilayeshu Pritak Chiptai Kashipubi Kantam Paryanka Vyajanasanahai Uparyupari Vinyasta Nilayeshu Pritak Chiptai Kashipubi Kantam Paryanka Vyajanasanahai Uparyupari Vinyasta Nilayeshu Pritak Chiptai Kashipubi Kantam Paryanka Vyajanasanahai Uparyupari Vinyasta Vaishnavis. Upaya Vinyasa. Upadi, upadi, one upon another. Vinyasta, placed. Nilayeshu, in stories. Pritak, pritak, separately. Shiptai, arranged. Kashipubhi, with beds. Kantam, charming. Paryanka, couches. Vyajana, fans. Asanahai, with seats. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The palace looked charming, with beds, couches, fans, and seats, all separately arranged in 7 stories. Purport. It is to be understood from this verse that the castle had many stories. The words Upariyupadi Vinyasta indicate that skyscrapers are not newly invented. Even in those days, millions of years ago, the idea of building many-storied houses was current. They contained not merely 1 or 2 rooms, but many different apartments, and each was completely decorated with cushions, bedsteads, sitting places, and carpets. After I read these other 2 verses, I will attempt to do that. Text 17. Tatra tatra vinikshita nana shilpopashobhati tam maha marakata stalya justam vidrum avedibihi. Translation. Its beauty was enhanced by artistic engravings here and there on the walls. The floor was of emerald with coral daisies. Purport. At the present moment, people are very proud of their architectural art, yet floors are generally decorated with colored cement. It appears, however, that the castle constructed by the yogic powers of Kardama Muni had floors of emerald with coral daisies. Text 18. Oh, purport. Well, I think I just read that. Text 18. Dvasavidruma dehalya Bhatam Vajra Kapatavat Sikaresh Injanileshu Hema Kumbhar Adishritam. Translation. The palace was very beautiful in its coral thresholds at the entrances and its doors bedecked with diamonds. Gold pinnacles crowned its domes of sapphire. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. So, Devahuti was the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, a great ruling personality in this universe, greater than the kings and that we're familiar with today. So his daughter, Devahuti, had been raised in a very opulent situation. She was a princess of the greatest ruler of this, not just this planet, but this universe. And she agreed to be the wife of a sage who was living a very austere life, Kardama Muni, who had prayed to Krishna to have a suitable wife. So she became the wife of Kardama Muni, and she adapted herself to his mentality, so that even though she was a princess of the highest degree and used to a very opulent life, she adapted herself to the mentality of her husband, who was living a very austere life. And she adopted that lifestyle herself until a certain point, Kardama Muni realized that he had a duty towards his wife, and it was arranged that she, although her physical appearance had deteriorated, she wasn't taking care of herself in the same way she would if she were living in a palace. Kardama Muni realized he had a duty to his wife, and some arrangement was made that she would be restored to her position of great beauty and opulence. So Kardama Muni manifested this wonderful airplane, this wonderful vimana, in order to carry out his responsibility to his wife, to give her children, and eventually, according to the Vedic system, he would renounce. The Vedic system was that at a certain stage of life, one should take vanaprast or sannyas, even if one had lived a life of great opulence. So this topic of aircraft, opulent aircraft, is very interesting. Sometimes I fly on airplanes, economy class, and it's nothing like what's being described here. Then even you have business class. It's really not so great compared to what's here. Even first class or beyond first class, sometimes in some planes they'll give you a little compartment all to yourself. But there's no sapphire seats or anything like that. Maybe even if you're the President of the United States and you've got a whole airplane all to yourself, or you're a billionaire or a great sheik of some fabulously wealthy oil state, you may have a whole airplane to yourself, but it's nothing like being described here. So this indicates, for one thing, that the demigods and the beings on the higher planets and the great sages and yogis and personalities of that sort have or can have a standard of opulence far greater than anything that's available on this earth planet. But that is not the ultimate goal of life, is to have all of these opulent facilities. And we see that coming up when Kardama Muni renounces everything, and Devahuti understands from her son, Lord Kapila, what the real goal of life is. So the real opulence of life is to be situated in one's Svarupa, one's eternal relationship with Krishna. That is the absolute goal of life. And we'll be seeing that as this goes on. But this topic of how, Srila Prabhupada mentions that these descriptions are describing things that took place millions of years ago. As he said in this purport, it is understood from this verse that this castle had many stories. The words of Paryu Parya Vinyasta indicate that skyscrapers are not newly invented. Even in those days, millions of years ago, the idea of building many-storied houses was current. So, saying millions of years ago, there were these flying machines, these idea of having many-storied buildings. This is something different than is being taught to most people today. They're taught that human beings didn't exist millions of years ago. Of course, there are many types of human beings mentioned in the Vedic literature, or human-like beings, like Kardama Muni and Devahuti weren't ordinary human beings. They existed on some higher level of reality. But they were human-like in the sense that they had basically the same form that we do. They had the same kinds of needs for eating, sleeping, some arrangement for having children, and defending themselves against other types of living entities. The asuras are always there in the background. Sometimes the asuras, they capture even the heavenly planets, like Hiranyakashipu. You know, Kashipu is mentioned here as beds. So Hiranyakashipu, he was an asura, but his name indicates he liked soft beds and gold. Hiranya means gold, Kashipu means beds. So that's a little echo of that's here in these verses. But millions of years ago, according to the Vedic literature, these skyscrapers were there. They're not invented recently. I mean, according to what most people learn in school or university, humans came into existence 200,000 or 300,000 years ago. For most of that time, they were hunters and gatherers. They weren't living in any type of, even a village. Village life, they say, came into existence about 10,000 years ago. And civilizations with buildings and monuments came into existence maybe 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. But here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're reading about accounts of such things, aircraft, spacecraft, existing millions of years ago. And they're very opulent. So Kardama Muni was a master of a technology based on more subtle elements than our scientists today are equipped to deal with. Today they can only manipulate the gross material elements. And if they want to build some airplane, they have to dig into the earth, dig up metal ores, refine them in huge refineries, take the metal that's gotten from the ores and turn it into pieces of equipment, in very complex factories, like, the Boeing company up in Seattle. They have to get millions of parts from all over the place. They're different subcontractors, and they have to have thousands of people working very hard to put them together. And then they sell them to the airlines of different countries, and they crash sometimes, and they get into all kinds of trouble. But Kardama Muni didn't, because he was the master of this more subtle technology that is known to the great yogis and the demigods, he could manifest such a wonderful aircraft simply by, I wouldn't say simply, but by his yogic power, his mastery of these more subtle energies. Of course, that comes from Krishna, ultimately. Krishna is the master of all yogis and yogic powers. But sometimes, even though a pure devotee may possess such powers, he doesn't use them. Srila Prabhupada said his mystic power was that he could convert personalities who would be regarded in terms of Vedic culture as very low class, he can turn them into devotees of the Lord. But the features of this Vimana that was manifested by Kardama Muni are kind of interesting. A little bit later on, a few verses on, we'll hear that there were gardens in this Vimana in which there were artificial birds, artificial swans, and other birds that were so real that real birds would come up to them and try to interact with them. And it's kind of interesting, the modern militaries are developing drones for different purposes. They can be used to deliver weapons, and they can also be used for intelligence purposes, for gathering information about the opposing forces, what their disposition is. So the United States military has developed drones like that, and they thought, well, if a drone looks like a regular drone and it's spotted, it may be shot down. So they developed drones that look like birds. Because if you see a bird, you think, okay, it's just a bird, it's not doing anything. And I read a news report that these drones were so realistic in their bird-like shape and activity that other birds would attack them, like a hawk or something, it attacks other birds. It would see one of these drones and go for it, thinking it was a bird. So it's kind of interesting, the advanced technology they were able to manifest. Like now we're talking about artificial intelligence and robots and things like that. But these things are nothing new. They were present millions of years ago, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, as it's being presented to us by Srila Prabhupada. But as we'll see, even though this fantastic opulence is available to Kardama Muni and Devahuti, ultimately it's not what they're interested in. Ultimately, it doesn't satisfy the real desires of the soul. It doesn't solve the real problems of life. So by the advancement of technology, although we can use everything in Krishna's service, ultimately, by itself, that advanced technology, whether it's the technology of modern science or the technology of the yogic powers and siddhis, it's not going to give real happiness. It's not going to solve the problems of life. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosh anudarshanam. An intelligent person sees that this is a place of birth, death, old age, and disease. And that's the real problem. And that has to be solved. Not the economic problem, not the political problem, not the sense gratification problem. Those aren't the real goals of life. Real goals of life are to become self-realized, God-realized. And that requires some restraint, restraining the senses from engagement with material sense objects, be they subtle or gross. Atato Brahma Jigyasa, the Vedic literature says, the Vedanta Sutra says, now that we've attained this human form of life, we're meant to use it to inquire about Brahman, not the temporary material world with all of its temporary pleasures and pains. So we'll see how this principle is manifested in the lives of Kardama Muni and Devahuti in the coming chapters. So we shouldn't get hung up on the middle part here, the life of a very sophisticated kind of sense gratification, a beautiful flying city in which the husband and wife travel all over the universe and engage in reproductive activity. So it's not the ultimate. The ultimate is coming in the future chapters. So I'll stop there. Any question or comment? Such an annoying. Oh, okay.
And she looked like a living wreck. Her body was skinny, her hair was tousled, and had been combed in 5 years. Like her hair hadn't been combed. She looked very, very unattractive. Not the kind of person that a man who was seeking a wife to want to have children with. She was the very opposite. So therefore, she was pretty much moaning and desiring and wishing that she could be that. And so what happened is Kardama Muni, who had mystic powers, he heard her thoughts, he heard her desires, he heard her wishes. So he allowed her to have those things so that she would transformed and be appealing. She would be appealing to him. And that's exactly what happened. She became an extreme good-looking, very attractive woman. That's very interesting because this goes back long ago. But even that principle of looking very attractive so that the man would want to go near her. And so that's what happens, and that's why she became very pretty, very beautiful, and therefore, although before he would not even look at her because she, as I said, she looked like a living wreck. But afterwards, she looked like, like a Miss America practically, if you want to use a common term. And therefore, that's what happened. In other words, she had kind of an inferiority complex because of the way she looked. But that was overcome by the very fact that Kardama Muni, who had mystic powers, conveyed to her the wishes that she had so that she could be attractive to him. And that's very interesting because then they actually became very attractive to one another and they did have children. So that's really all I wanted to say, that this did not come out of nothing. Devahuti definitely wanted to be attractive to him. And she knew she couldn't do it. She didn't have those powers yet. So, but Kardama Muni, he did have those mystical powers. And he satisfied her desire so that she would have those type of things. And therefore, he could then cohabitate with her and they could have children.
Yes.
Anybody else? Is that it? Huh? Yeah. Boss? Okay.
All right. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Glories to Bhagavatam.